Voilà. All right. Alors, bienvenue à notre troisième panel des Rangers de REL, notre table ronde. Alors, on va commencer la session avec une reconnaissance du territoire. Alors, le bureau de eCampus Ontario sont situés au centre-ville de Toronto et se trouvent sur le territoire traditionnel de nombreuses nations, dont les Premières Nations des Mississauga de New Credit, des Anishinaabe, de Chippewa, de Haudenosaunee et de Wendat. Moi, je suis une habitante et une visiteur de cette terre avec des liens ancestraux avec l'Europe continentale et la Thaïlande. J'ai le privilège de travailler, de vivre et de jouer sur cette terre et je respecte ceux qui ont vécu, travaillé et pris soin de cette terre et de ses eaux historiquement et aujourd'hui. Et je vous en prie, prenez un moment aujourd'hui à n'importe quel temps pour réfléchir aux gardiens des terres et des eaux sur lesquels vous vous trouvez à ce moment. Si vous aimeriez partager votre reconnaissance du territoire dans le clavardage, vous êtes aussi le bienvenu. Alors moi, je vais arrêter de partager mon écran et en effet, on va faire un... faut que je trouve la bonne page. Mais je vais passer en effet la parole à mon collègue Léo, qui va discuter très brièvement du programme des Rangers de REL. Alors, Léo, à toi.
Merci. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Tout d'abord, pardonnez mon français. Comme certains d'entre vous le savent peut-être, le programme Rangers de REL a débuté en septembre 2023 avec la bibliothèque libre d'eCampus Ontario. Nous avons reçu plus de 200 candidatures de 49 institutions de l'Ontario et nous avons actuellement 80 participants de 47 collèges, universités et établissements autochtones. Le programme de Rangers de REL vise à sensibiliser au REL en renforçant les capacités et en offrant un développement professionnel. Merci, Asihi.
Merci énormément. Alors aujourd'hui, on a trois experts qui vont discuter de leur expérience avec le programme de Rangers des REL, les REL en général et les ressources éducatives libres francophones plus spécifiquement. On a seulement 30 minutes pour cette session, alors on va aller très rapidement. Ce sera une ronde éclair, mais on va faire de notre possible. Alors je vais introduire nos Rangers et ensuite ils vont prendre un petit bout de temps pour se présenter. Alors, nous avons Justine Verviers-Fizet de la Cité, Paul Tanas de l'Université de l'Ottawa et finalement Angèle Gaudette du Collège Boréal. Alors, si vous avez des questions pendant la session, s'il te plaît, envoyez-les dans la boîte de clavardage ou dans la section questions et réponses de Zoom à n'importe quel temps. Nous avons seulement 3 questions qui sont préparées. Alors, si vous avez des questions, on est très content et contente de les répondre. Mais à ce moment, je vais passer la parole à nos participants. Et je pense en ordre, on va faire en ordre alphabétique avec le prénom. Alors, ça serait Angèle, Justine et ensuite Paul. Alors, notre première question, présentez-vous brièvement, puis racontez-nous votre parcours en tant que Ranger de REL. Comment est-ce que vos efforts de sensibilisation au REL en français ont-ils influencé votre expérience dans le programme? Pourquoi est-ce que le programme ou vos efforts de sensibilisation sont-ils importants pour vous? Alors, je passe la parole à Angèle.
Merci, Thierry. Moi, comme vous savez, c'est Angèle. Bon début, bonjour tout le monde. Moi, j'enseigne au Collège Boréal depuis 2018, plutôt à temps partiel.
2018, part-time, rather part-time. So sometimes I have some contracts that last for the whole year. Sometimes they're 4-month contracts. Sometimes it varies. So I'm everywhere, a bit everywhere. And so my journey as an OER Ranger has been very interesting in the sense that I knew what it was. I knew what OERs were. However, what I found is that the educational part that we learned at the very beginning that really reinforced my knowledge, and I really like the fact that eCampus Ontario and
pour vraiment épanouir ce que ça veut dire, les réels, pour nous donner la chance aussi d'aller dans nos institutions, puis de vraiment répandre, je dis la bonne nouvelle, je dis ça comme ça parce qu'il y en a qui sont complètement pas connaissants et ils savent même pas que ça
Don't
existe.
know anything about it, don't even know that these resources actually exist. So it was just a start. And I know that now in my institution, there is a more awareness and people engage more than there was, for example, in September last year. So if I compare, there is an improvement. And in terms of French resources, what I would like to see is a large array of French resources. I find that when we're looking for something that is specific, I find that I spend a lot of time just doing an investigation just to see if there is something that exists somewhere. So I'll leave it at that because we are tight in time and I want to be able to add some information later. Thank you, Angèle. Now we'll go to Justine.
Merci. Donc, c'est ça, moi, c'est Justine.
Thank you. My name is Justine. I have been teaching at Collège de la Cité since 2018 as well. So, same as Angèle, I am a respiratory therapist. However, I work in health care and I have had the chance to follow my program in or study in a Francophone setting. And what really shocked me when I was studying is the lack, the absolute shortage or scarcity of French resources. There was really not a lot of French resources on specific topics in the medical field, right? And then I went to university, Laval University, in educational resources, and I discovered OERs, and it was just a revelation for me because we are in a world where we're a Francophone setting, but OERs can actually become a good platform to develop some resources for people who are in a minority. So it just made sense to me when the OER Rangers program arrived, everything gained more sense, right? So in a context where we are minority, I thought, we among ourselves, why shouldn't we share what we have, what's already working well? Because as teachers, as educators, we already do so much for our students, and why reinvent the wheel every time? Why not share and start from resources that other people have developed and that will help us be able to provide more material in the language of study of our programs for our students, right? There's a lot of resources in French when you speak about more vague topics, broad topics, but if you fall into something more specific, healthcare, engineering, mechanical engineering, right? That's where you end up being kind of stuck. And this brings me to the importance of talking about the scarcity of French resources because we can actually bridge the gap, meet our needs all together. It makes a difference for French-speaking students. If we want to attract French-speaking students, it's very important for us to provide the resources to them to study in French. And I didn't have the chance to get that when I was studying, not because the program wasn't in French, but because the resources weren't. So I thought that it was very important to speak about this. Thank you. And there is a comment, in the chat that says that they have the same problem in Saskatchewan. So there you go. All French-speaking communities in minority situations have the same problem. There you go. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, Siri. Well, it leaves me a bit embarrassed because actually when Justin was speaking, I was just, agreeing with my head. Just to introduce myself, actually, my name is Paul Tana. I teach Introduction to Research at the University of Ottawa. And my experience has been, well, not surprisingly, it's very similar, actually. I I was very satisfied. Program has given me a lot of hope. And I think that my journey was quite similar to that of Angèle and Justine because, of course, because of our efforts, I see the Rangers' efforts as being catalyzers. Of course, we can't force people to adopt OERs in their pedagogical practices, but it helps a lot to have expertise, local expertise in our colleges and our universities, because after my meetings, after the presentations that I gave in several faculties, myself and Mélanie Grenier, my colleague, who is the librarian and who is really the person leading the open education initiatives, we've been receiving a lot more questions. There's a lot more awareness, engagement, interest. And I also have my own interests in research, but I want to let this forum open, this platform open. We can speak about my projects a bit later, but the initiative is very welcome, and I encourage eCampus Ontario to have a new cohort in the next year, because according to myself, from what I have been able to understand, it has given great outcomes, and it is an excellent initiative. I congratulate you. Well, thank you very much. And this is thanks to the work of my colleague Leo, who is responsible for this project. So a round of applause for Leo. And so we'll go to the next question. So from your perspective, how does the availability of promotion of OER in French affect the engagement and success of Francophone learners? And what are the specific challenges to the creation? What are the specific challenges to the creation and adoption of OER in French? And so we'll go in alphabetical order, but in the other way. So we'll start with Paul, and then Justine, and then Angèle. So I will make my answer shorter. With regards to the availability of OERs in French, I see three problems. We have a critical scarcity of OERs in French. So what we do is we take the content, we reuse it, and you need a starting point. In many cases, the starting point doesn't exist in French, so you can adapt OERs in English, but there's the level of complexity that needs to be added. So we need to adapt the content, we need to provide translation, and the traditions, the way that certain disciplines are taught in French or English is not exactly the same. So, to start with, there's already, if there's an educational resource that exists somewhere in English, to have a French equivalent, it is already complicated. It would be ideal to have a starting point, content to work with already in French. But as Justin has mentioned, I am not a medical expert, for example. When I did some research to help our researchers, I found that there was a chronic scarcity in many disciplines, but there are many of them that are really worse off than others. For example, sciences. The sciences, it's very scarce. There's almost nothing on specific areas and specific fields. And unfortunately, the authors who are bilingual. For example, the University of Ottawa is a bilingual institution, right? And so I will not go into details about the way that we offer courses. Of course, English is very present, and there are a lot of people who despite the fact that this is a bilingual institution, they come and they choose to study in English, right? But even in the creation of OERs, if you have a bilingual author, in most cases, they will choose English to promote OERs. Why? Because it gives them a lot more visibility in their, in their circle, in their area. If they're part of a research group only in French, to have some collaborations throughout North America, and we already know that North America is English speaking, what limits their collaboration. So to have collaborations with institutions elsewhere in Canada and the United States, well, for sure, these researchers and these professors will speak English if they're bilingual. And so collaboration kind of makes you go one way. It makes you work in collaboration more in English. So what this results in my own institution, at the University of Ottawa, we have to adapt to these circumstances. So when we have students and master students who are looking for resources, we tell them, well, there's not much in French. Can you do it in English and then write your tests in French? So they have to manage. But this is basically what I had to say. This is basically the overall picture of the situation on the ground at the University of Ottawa. And I'll be very happy to know what the situation is at my colleagues' institutions as well. All right, thank you. So the floor is Justine's now.
Mais je suis d'accord avec toi, Paul, en
Well,
ce moment,
thank you, Paul. I agree with you right now.
pas beaucoup en français. Au fil du projet, j'en ai
We
vu
have
sur
few resources in French. I have seen more emerge through the library lately, but there are not many that are available in French. So it would be very relevant for our student success and their engagement to have more. It is very difficult. As you were mentioning, I have the impression that we have more general OERs rather than specific ones. So it is hard to adapt some OERs for very specific projects sometimes. I'm in health sciences, right? So just to give you a very specific example, there's going to be a lot in nursing, but there are other specialties in health sciences. So we're dealing with available OERs that are just more general. And we have to adapt them to more specific contexts. So this is a great challenge. And regarding OERs, Paul, you were saying that there is the possibility of translating some. It is relevant, but the content also is sometimes very specific. So for example, we were raising the possibility of using AI to translate some OERs to increase the available pool of OERs, but sometimes the way that the phrasing is put, more specific terms, sometimes need to be confirmed by content experts. So I don't think that the solution would be to just translate everything. We have to make sure that the translation is efficient, is accurate. I know that that was part of the discussions as well, but I'm looking forward to more OERs being available in French. And I hope they will be an agent in that sense. So I will stop here. So Angèle, now the floor is yours.
initiatives qui sont disponibles, puis la promotion des réels, je crois qu'on...
So for the available tools and the promotion of OERs, what we do is what we can and not necessarily what we want to do, because there is a big scarcity of resources and there is a shortage of staff to produce content, and we have to see what the needs are. You know, Justine was saying that there are needs in health, sciences. Is there anyone in our environment?
Je crois qu'avoir des réels en français, c'est absolument positif pour l'engagement puis la réussite de nos étudiants. Absolument. Moi, je vois dans mes salles de classe, quand ils n'ont pas besoin d'acheter un manuel, c'est comme ouf! Tu sais, la pression vient juste de dégager, puis là, ils sont plus engagés à apprendre, moins inquiètes de les coûts, puis tout le reste. Mais quand tu leur dis que le manuel va coûter, tu sais, 200 $ ou etc., je veux dire, moi, je suis en comptabilité, des fois, là, je suis un petit peu partout, mais je trouve qu'en comptabilité, quand j'enseigne un cours ça s'appelle automatisation des opérations comptables, qui veut dire Sage 50, si vous savez la comptabilité un petit peu, c'est comment vraiment la faire avec un logiciel, faire la comptabilité avec un logiciel. Mais là, c'est des étapes. 1, 2, il faut absolument que tu ne manques pas d'étapes, puis etc. Ça, c'est très spécifique, comme Justine a dit. Puis, le manuel est très cher. Heureusement, on est capable d'en trouver un en français, mais c'est pas un réel. C'est vraiment, c'est un coût très dispendieux. Donc, je vais dire comme Paul, c'est un de nos projets futurs, peut-être plus tôt que plus tard. J'ai ça dans la tête depuis qu'on a commencé le programme des rangées. Je suis comme, parfait, j'ai la ressource parfaite que je veux rendre en réel. Parce que je trouve que c'est les étudiants qui nous disent, qui sont découragés, puis quand tu les vois comme ça, ils sont pas prêts ils n'ont pas l'esprit ouvert d'apprendre quand ils sont débordés de dettes, etc., puis on leur en donne plus. C'est pas qu'on fait par exprès, là, c'est juste que c'est la vie. Mais si on a le pouvoir de leur offrir des choses qui sont gratuites, pourquoi pas le faire?